Hello and welcome to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. My name is Natalie Himmelrich. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking with Amber, a young widow and divorcee who raises 4 children on her own. She lost her husband Tim just 7 months ago after a 16-month battle with cancer. She now is the captain, steering the ship of her family, running a household with 4 children under 12, at the same time as tending to her grief and her own needs. Amber is an inspiration. She's a guiding light as to her resilience that she draws from, inspiring with her version of grieving, seeing it as a sacred time, while also growing and evolving as her own person and in her life after loss of her soulmate. She believes that laughing means singing Tim's song, and it is a way to show her love for him. Amber shares this beautiful advice she picked up early on after her husband died.
One of the best pieces of advice that I got in the very beginning was go where your grief takes you. And for me, that meant like a week after my husband died, I could not sit still that day. So I was out mowing my lawn. There are plenty of days that I spend in bed still 7 months later, but that day in particular, I went where my grief took me. And that was mowing my lawn for whatever reason.
About this week's guest. Amber Jackson is a mom of 4, one with special needs, and a cancer widow, but that hasn't stopped her from living life to the fullest. She's a self-proclaimed life enthusiast and is determined to see everything that life has to offer, including the bad, as something she can learn from. She loves tulips, Pizza Friday, and kitchen dance parties. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast as much as I did. Amber is a true inspiration, and make sure to go and check out her Instagram page for more inspiration. And just a little PS, there is this story how I met Amber, or how she came into my radar as part of one of her reels on Instagram, where she shares the story of how she felt Tim while on a cemetery. Stay tuned, you'll find out when you listen to the episode. So welcome, Amber. It's so nice to have you here on the podcast. How are you today?
Oh, I am so good. Thank you so much for having me. I am truly honored to be here.
Oh, the pleasure is really mine. And Amber, I was just reflecting on how I met you, and we spoke a little bit before recording this. And so basically I found you, I don't know how, on Instagram. And the way I connect to people is or the way that they speak about their grief and trauma. And so for those who are listening to the podcast, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about your life story and how you met grief, loss, and trauma in your life?
Yeah, I feel like I have a couple of different situations with grief and with loss, and they've all kind of happened in my life in different ways. I was married very young. So I have 4 kids. I was married very young. We had 2 kids together. And after about 6.5 years, we got divorced. It was a surprise to me. He came in one day and just said, "I love you. I think you're amazing. I'm just not attracted to the kind of woman you are," which was like a huge hit to my gut. We went through that divorce. Our kids were 4 and 4 months old at the time. So it was a big life change. We had just had our second baby, and I thought we were going forward in life together, not what he wanted. So that going through a divorce is its own level of grief and loss. We got married a second time. Strange, I know. A lot of people are confused by that, but
I was confused as well. You said we got married the same time, so the same man the second time.
I married the second man a second time. Yeah. So shortly after our divorce was final, he came back, and he was very much still in our boys' lives, but because we have joint custody. But anyway, asked me on a date again, asked if I would be interested in giving it another shot. We got married again. That was short-lived. Wasn't what he wanted. Wasn't what I wanted. So we got divorced a second time, and it was all within like a 16-month period. It was very fast. So yeah, that it was like one divorce because it was the same man and it happened very fast, but it very much felt like two divorces because it was
Yeah.
two different situations where we tried, we gave it all we could, and then just decided that we were just better apart.
Mm.
Um, Divorce
How
does
long ago?
something to you.
How long was it ago? I don't know how the age of your children. Those listening might not either. So how long ago was the first divorce?
Yeah. So the first divorce, we separated in August of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So coming up on, 7.5 years. And then the second divorce was December of 2016.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I then met my now husband, and he was a breath of fresh air. He came into my life when I was not expecting it, and just I always say that he didn't turn my life upside down. He took my life that was upside down and made it right again. He just totally took on my boys. My oldest son has Down syndrome and autism, and he just loved the heck out of him, loved both my boys. And so Tim and I were married just over 3 years. This was a couple years ago. We have 2 kids together. When our youngest was just a month old, my husband had a seizure at work. He was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. It's glioblastoma. And he passed away last June. Oof. So that is a whole other level of grief, different than divorce. They are definitely both grief and loss, but in just 2 completely different ways.
Yeah. And to give an idea of the time, so when you say last June, as of recording this is 7 months ago.
Yes, 7 months ago, June of 2022. He fought for 16 long, wonderful, beautiful months. He fought so hard. I'm so proud of him. I feel like he fought the best that he could. And I couldn't be more proud of what he did for our family.
And still, this is quite recent.
Yeah, 7 months.
And so how do you deal with that? How did you so far manage your life with 4 kids? And
oh gosh. So for a reference, my kids are now 12, 7, 3, and 2. So my youngest was 17 months when he passed. My daughter, my 3-year-old had just turned 3 at the time. I think in the beginning, it definitely was not just day by day. It was like task by task. It was wake up in the morning and, okay, the kids need breakfast and I should probably change diapers. And this one needs to get pants on, things like that. Like I couldn't even focus on the end of the day. It was just getting through this next moment. Now, 7 months later, a lot of healing has happened, and I'm in a place where it's not so much day by day. I feel like I am able to take it a little more week by week, but there definitely are times that it is day by day. I've leaned on my family a lot. I've leaned on my friends, my church community a lot. And it truly is just trying to do right by my kids right now.
So you mentioned that a lot of healing has happened, and I have a lot of clients and people from the support group that I have that ask, well, how do I do healing? How does this happen?
Yeah. That's the magical question. I think that everybody wants to know. And I think I for sure went into it like, all right, my husband has died. I want the outline. I want the guidebook. Like somebody give me the steps that I need to do. And there's the 5 stages of grief that people talk about, but it's not linear. It's not like you can go through this checklist and think like, okay, I've hit all the boxes and now I'm done grieving and now I'm done healing. It's very much personal to each person. It's, it all comes in your own way. You have to figure out what it is that heals you. So I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got in the very beginning was go where your grief takes you. And for me, that meant like a week after my husband died. He died on a Monday. The funeral was on a Friday. So by the following Monday, I had already buried my husband. He'd only been gone a week and I had already buried him. I could not sit still that day. So I was out mowing my lawn, doing yard work, which sounds crazy to some people that a week later I would be up and moving and trying to take care of my home like that. But I knew that that day I could not sit still. There are plenty of days that I spend in bed still 7 months later, but that day in particular, I went where my grief took me, and that was mowing my lawn for whatever reason. And so I think a lot of people think that it, like I said, that it means staying in bed and just not doing anything and letting the sadness overcome you. And for me, a lot of my healing has been going where my grief takes me. Some days that's out doing a lot of stuff with my kids, that's spending time with family. Some days that's just being at home with my kids and we don't leave our pajamas that day.
Yeah.
I think you just have to really think of, what does that mean to you? Not what does it mean to anybody else? What does culture say that it should mean to you? Like, what does it mean to you? And I think that's where I've tried to take it, is what does that mean to me?
I like that. I like when you say, I go where grief takes me. You know, and I'm reflecting on that just today, as I was sharing with you. Today is the 11th anniversary of my mother's death. And
yeah,
I think I didn't use those words, but this is what I'm doing. Basically, I don't know what's coming and I don't know what I'm going to feel, but I let myself, specifically on those days or the weeks or in those periods, because it's not just the day, I let myself discover what's happening, even after 11 years, because it's not predestined as to what's going to happen. It's not said that I'm going to be sad or not sad. I don't know. I will find out. And I, at the same time as I watch where grief takes me, I watch myself.
Yeah.
I sort of have a witness position where I say, okay, what's happening now? You're becoming restless. What is it that's going on? What is that you need? And then, you know, some years looking back, last year I took 10 roses to the grave, and this afternoon I will see where it takes me, what I will do. I don't know yet.
And I don't think that there's a wrong answer. I think that some people get caught up. I get caught up sometimes in, like, is this how I should be doing it? Is this after 6 months, after 7 months? Is this how it should be? Should I be happier? Should I be more sad? There is no right answer. And I think sometimes we want to know that we're doing it correctly, or, like I said, that we're checking off those boxes, or that we're following the guidebook. There is no guidebook. You have to do what is true and authentic to yourself and what helps you feel connected to your loved one. Let's say it isn't a death, you know, your loved one, or if it is something like a divorce, just whatever is true and authentic to yourself.
Absolutely. You know, just today I was answering a question from someone saying, is that still normal that after 2 years I'm still so sad? And I was pondering the question, and as you were saying just now, what is normal? There are only things we hear through society, through culture, through things people have said before. And, you know, many things are being said again and again. Like, for example, I wrote an article on grief theory by Downton Abbey. So if you've watched Downton Abbey, you hear lots of people die, and you hear all these sentences, all these grief myths are being portrayed. And this is what we hear. This is what and society takes on as, this is how it should be. This is what's supposed to be. Like the things we hear, like time heals all wounds, for example. There's other things that people say. Now they use it sometimes in the wrong context, like time doesn't heal all wounds, literally. It's something that people want to understand, like more specific. Like in your case, we were just talking before, and you said you have 4 children, and you are here now, a single mom, or you are still married. Your husband is not physically with you, but you are taking care of not just you, but 4 children, your home, and your grief. How do you manage those different things that you have to look after?
It's a lot. I grieve differently than my kids do. All four of my kids grieve differently than each other. So I'm juggling how they're handling grief. I'm juggling how I'm handling grief. And on days it's hard when I have a heavy grief day and then they are having a heavy grief day. I think the first part was like throwing, like we talked about, grief culture, what society says grief is. I've like thrown it out the window, and I have lowered the expectations that I've had for what I normally have for my household. Prior to Tim's diagnosis, I felt like I ran a tight ship. I felt like my home was very well taken care of, and my husband helped me a lot with that. And we had rules and we had routines, and I felt like my house was somewhat clean, and we were just in such a rhythm. And now having to do it all myself, and really I have one more child in the mix because my youngest was just barely born when my husband was diagnosed. So now I have one more, and doing this alone, I very much look at their emotional needs at the end of the day. Like, okay, my house is a disaster. I have 8 loads of laundry. I still have dishes in the sink, but were my kids' needs met that day? Were diapers changed? Were they fed? Was I able to sing them songs, read them a book before bed? That kind of a thing. I very much had to let go of any guilt and any shame that I've had in taking care of my home or trying to meet other people's needs, and just focus on, what do my kids need today? How can I hold their grief with them today? My daughter right now, she's going through a difficult time where she's very clingy. She's 3 years old, and I don't know what's going on in her little brain, but she just has not been able to let me go all day long, which means a lot of the things that I normally try to take care of during the day have had to go to the side. And we've spent a lot of time coloring and reading books, and the laundry will still be there tomorrow. I just try to focus on what they need right now.
And where's Amber's grief needs?
As a mom, it's so easy. As a mom in general, it's so easy to put our needs last. It's so focused on our kids. It's focused on our spouse. It's focused on the people outside of the home. And I think this is the one time in my life when I have said, I need to focus on me. Not that I'm prioritizing it above my children in any way, but there are times that I am like, no, I need to do this for me. I always say, I'm the captain of this ship now. Like, I run this place. I need to be in the best place mentally and emotionally and spiritually that I can be. So I have had to take times. I go to therapy once a week. That's a huge thing for me. I that is an appointment that I do not miss. I try to take time with girlfriends, which is not something that I did a lot before. And now I'm like, I have to socialize with people outside of the toddlers in my home. I can't watch Bluey all day long as much as I love that show, and I joined a gym, and which is also something that's terrifying. I've had to focus on me because I cannot meet the kids of my need if I am taking from an empty cup, which has been a strange shift in my mentality because that's just not in my nature to focus on myself first. Yeah. And it's a balancing act. There are definitely days where I go where my kids are, where my cup is getting empty. And that's when I know, like, okay, I need some time to myself.
Yeah. I think you're speaking out of the hearts of so many moms. And often I use the metaphor of the plane where they say, put your own mask on before helping others. And it's ingrained in being a mother. I think it's biological even. I remember the time when I gave birth to my twins and then the younger twin died. I still had a baby at home, so taking care of me was mixed with the biological urge to get back to her and feed her and nurse her and hold her, whatever. And I still remember that when I went to therapy, and actually at the first few months I had my sister there to help. And then I was at therapy or at an appointment outside the house, and I had this urge to get back. So I think many people can relate to, how do I take care of myself when there's all these things that need to get done?
You know, and I don't know I don't know the magical words to fix that. I know for me, I have to remind myself constantly that I was a woman first and then I became a mom. Something something that my ex-husband said to me the night that he left the very first time. I think it was the worst thing he could have said, and it also has been the best thing. It has completely changed the trajectory of who I am as a woman. When he said, "I love you, I'm just not attracted to you as a woman." Because it was in that moment and in the following weeks and months that I was like, well, who am I as a woman? And who do I want to be? Like, if you don't like this woman that I am, do I even like this woman that I am? And I realized so much during that divorce that I had no idea who I was as a woman. I spent so much time as a mom and as a wife that I completely lost myself as a woman. And so I think now I went through that healing period with my divorce but you know, before I met my husband, of I am going to know who I am and I am going to love myself as a woman. And I think that's what made my marriage with Tim so incredible, is I was so true to myself and he loved every part of me, who I was authentically to myself. I just felt like he loved me to my core. So then now that he's gone, I just try to cling to that. Who am I as a woman and who do I want to be? And I want to make sure that I love myself through it. That's something I wish more women thought about themselves.
Yeah. How do you actually think that your grief was textured by the fact that you had this time from the onset of Tim's diagnosis to his death? How do you think your grief has been informed by that time of knowing, okay, this is happening? I don't know if it was clear from the beginning that this is terminal. I don't know.
It was. So when he was first diagnosed, the first doctor said, you know, this is what he has. He has glioblastoma. And she said, you know, see this oncologist, but I'm letting you know you need to get your affairs in order. So I didn't think he would make it even like 6 months. And, you know, they say never trust Google, but Google says like 12 to 18 months, and Tim lived 16. So he was right on par. We got a second opinion and he saw some incredible doctors. And I think that he lived as long as he did because of them. But so I knew from the beginning that it was terminal. I think, as terrible as it was to watch him go through that, I am so grateful for it. That sounds so awful, and it may even sound like a bit of an oxymoron.
No, I
But
understand.
we were able to take that time and just spend it together. You know, one of the things that Tim always said after he was diagnosed, before he died, was not everyone gets the opportunity to be faced with their mortality this way.
Exactly.
And we were so grateful for that, because it completely changed our perspective on life, on how we wanted to live life, on how we saw each other. You know, we took a lot of our typical I love you and our I miss yous and turned that into like just expressing our love for each other in different ways. We would say more of, I am so grateful I have you in my life. You know, like, you completely changed me. We just turned our sentiments into something greater. And I personally am grateful for that time. And I feel like I was able to plan and prepare a lot for his death before he died. I started going to therapy before he died. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I was able to work out a lot of stuff before he actually died. I don't know if it necessarily made his death any easier, but I feel like I had the tools to prepare for his death.
Yeah. What do you think helped the most in terms of the therapy that you have?
I think she helped me see a lot that, one, because I kept saying to her, like, I want to make sure that I'm prepared so that when he does die, I don't completely fall apart for my kids. I'm not like a mess. And she kept telling me it's okay if you do. So I think it was the acceptance that that when he dies, like I am allowed to grieve. Just because I spent 16 months grieving his death beforehand, the anticipatory grief was huge, which is the all of the grief that you're going to do before they die, that it was still okay, that it hit me hard, and that I still lost it when he died. And then I think it was, we've spent so much time going into who I am, so that when he died, I have definitely had feelings of like, well, who am I now? But I don't think to the extent that I could have, or that some people do, because when he died, I still know exactly who I am. I know who I am because he loved me. And I spent a lot of time thinking about that before he died.
Yeah. I think you make an important point there. So anticipatory grief doesn't erase or eliminate the grief.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it gives a different flavor to the whole situation, because you know something's coming.
Yeah, it's just it's just a different layer.
Yeah, as opposed to us believing that we're immortal and gonna live forever, or believe or try to live as if. And I think for me, having been faced with mortality myself in the different losses that I had, I have come to appreciate the time and the awareness that this has allowed me to gain. And you know, where you were saying before, I'm glad for this time, or maybe you said it in different words, but I can completely relate to you. Like my mother, she had multiple suicide attempts before she died today, 11 years ago. And to some degree, from the time that these attempts happened and I spoke to her about it, like I remember when I was 19 weeks pregnant, she spoke to me after one of her attempts and she said, you know, I know that the grief would be hard, but with time it would get easier. Now, at the time, I was really angry at her for saying that. I said, well, how do you think I'm going to be pregnant with your grandbabies and grieve my own mother? How do you think that's going to happen? I was really angry. But now looking back 11 years later, her statement is true. It's not that because of time it gets easier, but it's now 11 years and I am definitely not where I was the first day. And I wouldn't say that I still grieve like the first year. Not at all. This is not my experience. And I'm glad for the experience that I had of understanding and being able to speak with her about those things. Like she even said to me, you know, I asked her, well, how could you commit suicide or when you have grandbabies on the way? And she said to me, you know, it has nothing to do with you. I do not think of you in that moment. And as much as that from a sane mind is difficult to understand, I now understand this can only be something that happens because that person is not thinking of anyone around.
Yeah.
But tell me, how do you feel now? It's the second part of the first year since the loss of Tim. How do you see yourself different from right the first few months?
I've put a lot of thought into this, and I feel like my end goal was always to no longer feel grief or to feel it as strongly. And I don't think that'll ever happen. Like you said, like you don't feel it as strongly now 11 years later, but you've had that time and you've figured out how to grow around your grief. And so for me, I think after 7 months, I have realized that I know a lot of people have compared their grief. They say that inside you have like a grief button, and at first your button is really big and the ball bounces around and hits the grief button, and over time your grief button gets small, I think is how people have said it. I don't know if my grief...
I actually would say the grief ball doesn't actually get smaller, but the life around you grows.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. I was going to say, I don't feel like mine has gotten smaller. I feel like I have grown around it, which I love to look at it that way because I think it's so beautiful. I like to think that I have grown and I have learned and I have evolved, and I just see such beauty in it. I visualize like a garden and like florals, and just I'm able to grow into something beautiful. And a part of me recently has struggled with this idea of growing growing bigger than my grief, because that means that the Amber that I was with Tim is going to grow and evolve and change. And I thought, but I love that Amber. I love that version of me that was with Tim. So I don't want to leave her behind. I don't want to leave her. I love her. He loved her. So if I grow and evolve and change, that means that I'm leaving this version of myself behind with him. And so I know that that's a hard thought, and that's a feeling that a lot of us have, but I just think how glorious it is and how beautiful it is to take that version of me that I love and that he loves, and just to turn it into something even better. Because I know that if he were here, and I believe that he is still watching me, that he is going to continue to love this Amber, that is going to take this that happened and just grow with it and turn it into something beautiful. I don't know what yet, but it's going to be something good.
And also, I think he would have loved the Amber that you would have become anyway in your life.
Yes.
So
yes.
The growth happens in any way. And I think that's beautiful that you say that. And it makes it also really beautiful for people to understand the longing for that person that we were with, that other person that we loved.
Yes.
And to sort of, the acceptance of change happening anyway. Like, my daughter is now 11 and almost a half. And so to some degree, for me, it's easy to imagine an identical twin with her. She sometimes says, so I would imagine Amaya looking at me exactly the same way and would be speaking to me. So it's easy for us to imagine, because they are identical twins. And still, the time moves forward. So she is now no longer a baby. She's 11 and a half, and she will continue to grow. The metaphor that I like is, for me, grief is like a baby. It grows up with me. And that's at the beginning, it requires a lot of attention. It requires actually 24 hours of attention. And when it grows up, there comes a point when it wants to discover things on its own, and it doesn't require my attention all the time. But I might still want to, I still, oh, she's so cute in the child metaphor.
Yeah.
And I might not want to let her go.
Yeah.
And it's that attachment and letting go that happens with the digestion of the grief and the time, to the point where now she's 11, and most of the time she says, I don't want you to help me. I can do it on my own. And she gets really annoyed. But then there's times when she really needs me and sits on my lap. So I have to work on acceptance of her growing up, the same way as the distance from the loss increases and changes my grief. I mean, for me personally, I have been really working on digesting my grief. I think right from the beginning. And just like you were saying, I went to a therapist myself because I wanted a sounding board. Even though I had been trained as a grief counselor, I said, I need a sounding board to know, am I doing this the right way? Because having studied it doesn't make you do it the right way. So just looking back for you, what resources and insights have helped you the most so far?
I don't know about resources, but I know, well, I was just thinking about change really fast, and how with change, there's just that conflict of pain. Like, once I've accepted that, like, with change, there is going to be pain. It's my grief is going to show up in different ways. So once I've accepted that, and like, that will happen, and that's okay. Because I keep thinking, is this okay that I'm feeling this? Is this okay? Yes, it's okay. I feel like that has really, really helped. I think just the insight that there is no right or wrong way to do this. Just like I had said in the beginning, everyone is different, and you just have to find what works for you. I know, like, for my kids, we go to the cemetery every Sunday, and I have received a lot of judgment for that. People think it's strange, and some people think it's morbid. My kids are young, and it's a tangible place that we can go where they can feel connected to daddy. And we usually go in the evening, every Sunday evening. So it's sunset, and Arizona has some of the most beautiful sunsets. So we look at it, and it's always, look, daddy made the sky that pink orange tonight, and look how beautiful that is. And it's a place that they can go where they can feel connected to him. And we think it's beautiful. It is such a sacred time for us. I think this time in our lives is such a sacred time. And I feel like so many people, if they looked at I won't even say their grief, but their trials as like, this is a sacred time for me. I feel like that has helped me wrap my brain around, how am I going to enjoy this? How am I going to make this time for me? I want this to be a time in my life when I look back and I'm like, I did that. And I was amazing through it, even though on a day-to-day basis, I don't feel that. This is such a sacred time in my life and for my kids. And I just really try to lean into that.
So I think now I remember one of your Instagram stories or reels. And this was with the cemetery, where you shared about going to the cemetery and wanted to have Tim show you that he's around.
Yeah.
You want to talk about this because that's such a beautiful story.
This was just a couple weeks after he died. My husband was a very big prankster. He loved to pull pranks on people. Oh, he loved it. And my kids were playing and I sat there and I was praying to the Lord and I was talking to Tim, and I just needed to know that you're there, that you're still there, that I can still feel you in my life. And at that moment, the sprinklers turned on. Is that the moment you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I know they're on a timer. I know that. But I don't doubt for a second that was Tim. Like, let me show you that I'm still here. Like, I can still prank you from the other side. And I just felt so connected to him in that moment. So,
yeah. Thank you for sharing that story.
yeah.
And to go back to what you said before about some people think this and some people think that, I think it's important for people to hear whatever you do, no matter how good you do it or how little you do it, people will have an opinion.
Absolutely.
And either way, the opinion will go either way. And I think the most important thing that I take from our conversation is that feeling what's right for you and finding that in yourself. And even if you're asking, am I doing the right thing? You're pivoting between options here. I could do this or think that, but you're in the right path. It doesn't matter where you drive, on the left or on the right side of the road, but you're on the road.
I think one of the things for me is I was having a hard times, especially in the very beginning, times that I would have laughter and I'd have joy. And then I would stop myself and think, I can't feel this. I can't feel this right now. My husband just died a couple of weeks ago, or my husband just died 2 or 3 months ago. Like, I'm spending time with family and I'm laughing a lot. And then I would, in that moment, rein it in and think, I am laughing way too much. I should not be this happy. I should not be able to feel this kind of thing. And I think one of the phrases that actually kind of bothers me sometimes is when they're like, Tim would want you to feel this way, or Tim wouldn't want you to feel this way. And I'm like, I know that. I know. But a way that it was said to me, which I thought was so beautiful, was when someone said, Tim loved to laugh, and to laugh is to sing Tim's song. I don't know why that put that in a different perspective for me, but I just thought Tim did love to laugh. Tim loved everything about life. I feel like he romanticized life, and not just our romance and our relationship. He would hear a song on the radio and he would be like, I love this song. He would make dinner and be like, this was so good. We'd have moments with the kids and he would be like, that was such a good night. He just romanticized life. So then when I think about times when I laugh, I think, this is not me feeling joy when I shouldn't. This is not me moving on and no longer grieving Tim. This is me singing his song. This is me living life to the best that I can, even though he has died. Death is terrible. Grief is awful, and it is a terrible thing that he has died. And I think that the best thing that I can do to continue to sing Tim's song and to show my love for him is to continue to live life in that way, continue to laugh and to make these memories with my kids and to romanticize life the way that he did, to wake up and to think, my daughter, my 3-year-old will say, it's a beautiful day. The birds are singing and the sun is shining. And at early in the morning, I'm like, it is too early for that. But there are times when I'm like, it is, but I'm like, you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. And so I think that I have just tried to continue to sing Tim's song, to just live life in a beautiful way. Those are my ending thoughts.
And I think that's a beautiful place to find an end with this, because what you're saying is absolutely, I think, spot on. We have an idea of what grief looks like, but what if grief takes you wherever you need to go would be to laugh and enjoy it when it is now. Because the truth is, there's also sadness and there's also tears. They're just not at the same time. And many times, those sad moments when you're crying are not those that you live out in public.
Yes. And I know on my social media, I sometimes get people that are like, why don't you show those times when you are having a deep, deep grief moment and you're crying and all that? And I'm like, to me, that's just not authentic. Those deep moments for me are very sacred. They're very sacred to me. I hold them very close. The moments that I am on my bathroom floor in tears, those are the times that I connect with the Lord. Those are the times that I connect to Tim. And that's just not a moment that I share with everybody, because I hold them so near and dear to my heart. I think I went through this life journey, in the last 8 years of figuring out who am I as a woman and who do I want to be, and living authentically. And I always thought that Tim came into my life. I call him my meteor. It was after my divorce. I felt like it was a dark night. I feel like I was just trying to survive. And he came in and just lit everything up. He loved me in a way that I don't feel like I've ever been loved. And I feel like he allowed me to love myself in that same way. And so then I always thought, every good part of who I am is because of who he is, because he loved me, and he was the one that made me into this person. And after he died, I've realized it was always there. He just helped me tap into it. And so now to let his legacy live on, I think that's something that we who have experienced someone who is close to us have died, we think, how can we let their legacy live on? Because the rest of the world keeps turning, but my world has stopped. So how can we let him live on through our lives? And for me, that is to continue to be that woman that he loved and be my authentic self and just be who I am fully, which means, to me, it means love and laughter and all of that.
Thank you so much, Amber.
Yeah.
For sharing time with us and speaking so openly and authentically about
Absolutely.
the way you are in this grief journey. And it's also really beautiful that you were willing to speak about your life with Tim, and the legacy that you are carrying forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
So as you know, we're going to end this podcast with just 5 questions.
Yeah.
5 sentence starters, actually. Are you ready?
Yes.
So grieving and trauma means?
Can be a beautiful transformation if we let it.
And healing means?
Healing is a beautiful change that I think that we need to accept and lean into.
And what I have learned about myself in the light of loss and trauma?
That I can do such hard things, and that I don't only need to survive through them, but I can thrive through them.
And one thing I wish people knew about loss and trauma?
That there is no guidebook. There's no rule book, and that you can go through it how best you need to.
And one specific thing that has changed since my loss and trauma that I wouldn't want to miss?
The love that has increased for myself.
Thank you so much, Amber. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and your story and your beautiful laughter. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here.
Thanks for listening to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. If you'd like to be updated on future episodes, please subscribe to our newsletter on nataliehimmelrich.com. If you need grief support, please contact me for a 30 minutes free discovery session. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is produced and edited by me, Natalie Himmelrich. To support this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. And remember to keep breathing. I promise it will get easier.